It's NFL prediction time. I'm here to give you guys my NFL record predictions plus my Super Bowl picks for the upcoming 2024-2025 NFL season. I'm not going to be giving you guys in-depth breakdowns because I don't want this to drag on longer than what it needs to be. So let's start off with the AFC West. We got the Las Vegas Raiders. I got them coming in last place in this division at 4-13. Listen, I love Antonio Pierce. It's just that they don't have a good quarterback situation. Aiden O'Connell didn't look good anytime they played against a great defense last year or a team that had a record of 500 or better. And plus, you got Devontae Adams, who recently did a podcast with Shannon Sharp talking about he would have no problem with Tom Brady coming out of retirement despite how old he is. I don't think Devontae Adams has a lot of confidence in that quarterback situation despite all the positive things that he tries to say. Aiden O'Connell does have a little bit of upside, but at best, I don't see him any more than a journeyman quarterback, similar to a Ryan Fitzpatrick. Gardner Minshew is kind of the same way. And that's the thing that holds the Raiders back because they got one of the more difficult schedules in the NFL this year. You got to play in a really tough division with a Jim Harbaugh coach Chargers team. You got to play Kansas City twice. I don't think you're going to get lucky and beat them like how you did on Christmas Day last year. Plus, you're going to be a team that's going to win by running the football and relying on great defense. And with you having a difficult schedule going against a lot of elite quarterbacks like Lamar, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, I just don't think your style of winning equates to you having a lot of success this year. And you're pretty much a diet version of what the Pittsburgh Steelers have been over the last couple of years. Yeah, you're good in other areas outside of quarterback, but your quarterback play is just so abysmal that it's just going to hinder the performance of this team. If you had a better quarterback, or let's say that you drafted Jaden Daniels or Michael Penix in the first round this past year, I would see you as a potential playoff team. But the quarterback position is the most important in the NFL. You don't have one. I can't see you having too much success, especially when you have a defensive-minded head coach. If you have an offensive-minded head coach, he can elevate a guy like Aiden O'Connell. But when you hire Luke Getsy, who is one of the worst OCs in the game, he got fired by the Chicago Bears, I got to question your offense and your quarterback play. I just don't see it being that great. I got the Denver Broncos finishing in third place in the AFC West at 7-10. The Broncos are going to be a little bit better than what people think. I don't think they're going to be a dog shit team. I believe with Bo Nix getting drafted by one of the greatest offensive minds in league history, he's going to have a really outstanding rookie season. They got a really good offensive line. It's just that when you look at their defense, they don't really have a lot of elite players on defense. You got Patrick Surtain and maybe two other guys who may be pretty good, but outside of that, your defense isn't going to be that good this year. Now, Vince Joseph was able to turn things around after the Dolphins dropped 70 on them, but that was mainly because of how good they were at forcing turnovers. And coming away with takeaways isn't something that always is consistent on a year-to-year basis. I think the Broncos are going to be one of those teams that they're going to be a tough out anytime you play them, but late in games, they're going to struggle to finish and walk away with W's. I got Kansas City finishing in second place in the AFC West. They've won this division for nearly every year I've been watching football, but I think this year it finally comes to an end. Yes, they still are a really good team, but they got some concerns on the offensive line. They got a position battle going on for left tackle. We don't know how that's going to play out. Jawan Taylor wasn't that good, and they spent a lot of money on him in free agency. At wide receiver, you added Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown, but Marquise Brown, he's more of a Robin than he is a Batman. He also has a problem with drops. And I love Hollywood Brown. He comes from Florida. He's a Florida boy. I always got to support my Florida brethren out there. But I don't think he's that good enough where he's just going to completely move the needle for Kansas City. And I think this is the year that Kansas City may come up a little bit short in the postseason. and they are what people thought they would have been last year. So I got them at 11-6. You know that they're going to have a really good defense, and they still are going to be a really good team, but their schedule is a lot more harder compared to the Los Angeles Chargers, who I have winning the AFC West with the 12-5 record. The Jim Harbaugh impact cannot be overlooked. This dude has won everywhere he's been. San Diego State, just won a national championship at Michigan. His first 3 years coaching in the NFL, he took the 49ers from being irrelevant bottom feeders to 3 straight NFC Conference Championship games and a Super Bowl appearance during that span. And with him having Justin Herbert, I think that's going to be good enough for this to be a playoff team. Also, with them having a really good offensive line, they're going to have a dominant rushing attack, something that they've lacked the last couple of years under the previous regime. Greg Roman, he's going to have Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins looking like studs. And even if one of those guys go down, with how good Greg Roman's run scheme is, his scheme elevates whoever he has at running back. And although there are concerns about the wide receiver position, Ladd McConkey is going to be a stud. He runs fantastic routes. He's a great separator. Normally when you're good at those two areas, you end up being a pretty damn good wide receiver. And you don't need to have an elite wide receiving core to win in today's NFL. Just look at who the Chiefs won the Super Bowl with last year at wideout. And when Jim Harbaugh was coaching with the 49ers, he didn't have great receivers. He had Michael Crabtree and Vernon Davis. Jim Harbaugh is going to win the way that he knows best. Smash mouth football, being physical at the point of attack. They're also going to have a really good defense. His defensive coordinator, Jesse Minter from Michigan, was outstanding. He follows him to the NFL as well. With the Chargers having a more easier, favorable schedule than Kansas City, I think that's going to be a large reason why they end up winning this division, and I got them at 12-5. In football, we all know that no quarterback can win without good protection up front. It's also important that you protect yourself from data brokers who sell your personal information online to scammers, spammers, and anybody else who may want to target you. That's why you should use Aura, today's sponsor of this episode. Aura shows which data brokers are passing away your information on the internet and automatically submits opt-out requests on your behalf. Go to aura.com/JTSports in description or pin comment down below to get a 14-day free trial and protect your personal information from being exposed online. Cleaning up your information online not only helps reduce the amount of spam you receive, but it also protects you from hackers who could use this info to help gain access into your social media accounts, bank accounts, or other sensitive information. Go to our sponsor, aura.com/JTSports in description or pin comment down below to gain access to your 14-day free trial and protect yourself from hackers looking to gain access into your sensitive information online. Moving on to the AFC East. New England, I got them at 2-15. I was struggling with my prediction for the Patriots because even though on paper they don't look that good, if Gerard Mayo is as good as what the Patriots front office believes he can be, because this dude in his contract did have a stipulation when Bill Belichick retired or got fired that he was going to be his successor. My problem with the Patriots is that I don't like their offense at all. Now, they do have some receivers that I like. Pop Douglas, who's from the 904. You also have Javon Baker, who you drafted in the later rounds of this past year's NFL draft. One of the biggest sleepers in the draft, in my opinion. He was my 6th-ranked wide receiver. It's just that your quarterback situation isn't good. Jacoby Brissett, I don't think he's going to be good enough to win you a lot of games. Drake May, I could see him struggling behind the offensive line. That's a little And plus, Alex Van Pelt, as an offensive coordinator, he hasn't really proven that he's a good play caller. The last time he was calling plays with the Buffalo Bills back in 2009, they had one of the worst offenses in the NFL that season, and he never called plays with the Cleveland Browns neither. Him and Deshaun Watson didn't get along. I just feel that although their defense should still be pretty good, not as good as what it has been the last couple of years under Bill Belichick, that is going to keep them from being a team that you just look at and like, oh yeah, we're going to blow them out. They are going to be able to have a lot of close games, but they're going to come up short because I just don't think they're going to get enough production offensively. This is a team that mainly is going to win because the run game and having a good defense, and I just think their quarterback play is going to be a detriment to them. Plus, Alex Van Pelt, I don't have a lot of confidence in him neither, which is why I have them going 2-15. The Dolphins I have at 7-10. I know a lot of people are going to be really surprised about this, but I just see something going wrong for the Dolphins this year. They lost a lot of talent on the interior of their offensive line. I don't think they did a really good job of replacing those guys in the offseason. Last year, they struggled against good teams. They had a losing record against teams that had a record of 500 or better, dating back all the way to 2022, the second half of that year. Tua doesn't look good in big games neither. This is an offense that averaged over 30 points per game when they were going against teams that had a losing record. But when they went against teams that had winning records and were playoff teams, guess how many points they averaged? They went from 30 to only 13. And it's evident because, think about it, they put 70 on the Denver Broncos and then got blown the hell out the following week by the Buffalo Bills, who hung 40 on them. They also downgraded at defensive coordinator. I don't care if the players didn't get along with Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio drastically improved that defense. And for how good that defense was, considering all the injuries they had, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips ran down, you were without Jalen Ramsey for a good portion of last year. That was a damn good defense. And that defense was the sole reason why they still had the shot to win a lot of those games against good teams when their offense was putting up duds. So I just don't have a good feeling about the Dolphins this year. I think they're in for a little bit of a down season. I got them going 7-10. The New York Jets, surprisingly, I have them at 10-7, being a playoff team. And it's like, I feel the same way about the Jets as I feel about the Miami Dolphins, man. I just have a weird feeling about this team, but at the same time, I still have a hard time writing off Aaron Rodgers. Okay, I know the brother has been doing a lot of weird stuff lately. You know, the dude missed mandatory minicamp to go do a drug called ayahuasca. It's just, with Aaron Rodgers, it's just, look, I give you the benefit of a doubt because you're Aaron Rodgers. And the New York Jets, they do have a really good roster, despite them having a couple of players that are a little bit injury prone. You know their defense is at worst going to be a top 10 unit. As long as Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy, this should be a playoff team. And a lot of their losses last year, they would have won if they had better quarterback play. You remember when they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs? Zach Wilson played the best game of his career and yet still lost that game because he turned the ball over late in the fourth quarter. If you had Aaron Rodgers, you win that game. So not having Aaron last year costed the Jets potentially 3 or 4 potential wins. With him being fully healthy, I believe he's going to bounce back. He's a Hall of Fame caliber player. Hall of Fame caliber players regress at a slower rate than normal, especially when you're an all-time great like Aaron Rodgers. You always just find a way to beat the odds and overcome adversity. So despite how questionable the New York Jets coaching staff is, Nathaniel Hackett kind of being a noob as an offensive coordinator, I still believe that the Jets are going to succeed this year. So I got them at 10-7. I got the Buffalo Bills at 10-7 also, but since I believe they're going to have a better record inside this division, I got them going 5-1 against every team in the AFC East this year. They're going to end up winning this division once again. Some people are a little bit down on Buffalo because of how much they lost this offseason, losing their 2 best receivers from last year, Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs to Houston. You also lost a lot of vets on defense, but Sean McDermott is one of the better defensive minds in the game. Josh Allen still is a top 3, probably the second best quarterback in the game, depending on who you ask. I love Keon Coleman. You got Dalton Kincaid, who people seem to be overlooking this year. People keep asking, who's going to be the number one guy in this offense? Is it going to be Keon Coleman? Is it going to be this dude? It's going to be Dalton Kincaid. If you play fantasy football, make sure that you draft Dalton Kincaid early. This dude is going to do big numbers this year. He had a fantastic rookie season when their other tight end, Dawson Knox, went down. And his rookie season got a little bit overshadowed with how good Sam Laporta was. But the Buffalo Bills, to me, still are the best team in this division. I trust them a lot more than I trust the Jets and any other team in this division. They smacked the Dolphins the 2 times they played last year. I don't really see that changing that much. So I have them winning the AFC East again, going 10-7. Moving on to the AFC South, I got the Tennessee Titans going 5-12. The Titans are a really hard team to predict because if Will Levis balls out, they're good enough to not only win this division, but they could make a deep playoff run. But at the same time, Brian Callahan has never called plays, so we don't know how good he's going to be as a play caller. Will Levis, he only had 2 good performances last year, and the rest of them were below average. He played really good in his debut against the Atlanta Falcons. He had a solid game and their upset win against the Miami Dolphins. I think it was Monday or Thursday Night Football. I don't remember when, but outside of those 2 games, man, I wasn't really impressed. I think he needs to get a lot better when it comes to reading defenses. He has a really good deep ball, but I just don't know about Will Levis. I just need to see it. I think that defense is going to take a major step back as well. Mike Vrabel had that defense playing at an insanely high level, and it was always surprising because the Tennessee Titans are one of those teams that always seem to have bad luck when it comes to injuries. By the time you get to the middle portion of the season, half of their roster is on IR. So for Tennessee, I just have them at 5-12. Have a lot of concerns about Brian Callahan. Well, I won't say concerns, but I don't know about him, and I don't know about Will Levis. I love the team that they have around those guys, but it's just, man, I just don't know about them. I got them at 5-12. I got the Indianapolis Colts going 7-10. The reason why I'm having a hard time seeing Indianapolis as a playoff team this year is because Anthony Richardson, I still believe, is going to be very inconsistent, and he's going to look really raw this year. You see, the selling point with AR last year is that if you start him, you can win games with his athleticism, and plus, what he needed was more in-game reps. Well, with his rookie season getting cut short due to that shoulder injury, we don't know just how improved he's going to be because the only way Anthony Richardson can get better is by playing in games. That's the thing that was the biggest knock on him coming out of Florida, is that he was really inexperienced. And when you take away all those rookie games from him, you still have a fairly inexperienced quarterback that's still going to be very inconsistent throwing the football, and there's going to be a lot of ups and downs with him. And that's why I got them going 7-10. Plus, their secondary still hasn't improved. They still don't really have a lot of talent on that end. They did improve their pass rush a tad bit, but I just don't see the Colts having the success they had last year in 2024. I got them going 7-10. I think next year is when they make that big leap. When Anthony Richardson goes into year 3, he has a full season under his belt. That's when we could see him potentially play at an MVP level. I don't think Anthony Richardson is going to be terrible. I just think that he's going to have some good games when he goes off for like 300 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and maybe has a couple on the ground as well. But he's also going to have some games where, you know, he struggles. He has about 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. It's going to be a lot of inconsistency out of Anthony Richardson this year. I got the Jaguars finishing second in the AFC South behind the Houston Texans. I have them going 9-8 this year. I like their new defensive coordinator that they hired from the Atlanta Falcons, and Ryan Nielsen. He did a fantastic job with that Falcons defense. I thought that unit was very underrated. He's going to maximize the talent that they have on that defensive line. Trayvon Walker, we could see him take another big step, and maybe he gets the double-digit sacks, and that's going to be scary considering that Josh Allen is coming off a monster season last year. They also have a pretty decent secondary. Offensively, I still don't really know what to expect from Jacksonville because although Trevor Lawrence was inconsistent for most of the second half of 2023 due to injuries. The play calling from Press Taylor was not that great. Doug Peterson still hasn't given a word if he's going to take back play calling or if he's still going to leave it in Press Taylor's hands. Still don't really know about the offensive line this year. Also, I just see the Jags, that's a 9-8 team, but that doesn't mean they can't make it to the playoffs. And I got the Houston Texans winning this division for a second consecutive season. They just have one of the best overall rosters in the league, and they probably are the most improved team going into this season, man. They went from a team that was, the biggest surprise of the league to pretty much a Super Bowl contender now, considering what they have on offense. Stephon Diggs makes that receiving core the best in the league with Nico Collins, Tank Dell. You also got Don Schultz at tight end. You traded for Joe Mixon also. CJ Stroud should win MVP this year, because when you have a team that has two of the best route runners in the league, at least one of those dudes are going to be open. They got a lot of depth. The only concern is their offensive line. If their offensive line takes a step up, this is going to be a scary team this year. You know that defense is going to be even better going into year 2 under the Miko Ryans with the new pieces that they're going to be bringing in. I love the Houston Texans to make a deep playoff run this year. I got them winning the AFC South again. Moving on to the AFC North, I got my Pittsburgh Steelers coming in at 7-10. I don't ever want to hear you guys call me biased. I get really pissed off when you guys say I'm being biased, because I got my favorite team going 7-10. I just don't see it with Pittsburgh this year, man. I get that Mike Tomlin always finds a way to get a winning season out of his rear end, but I think this year really comes to an end. The schedule is really difficult, and the quarterback situation I don't really think has improved all that much, because Russell Wilson is on the decline. There's a reason why Denver took a record-setting dead cap hit to get rid of him. I think he was only as good as what he was statistically because the Broncos were always playing from behind, and Sean Payton is one of the best offensive minds in league history, so he was able to get the most out of Russell Wilson. I just don't like the Steelers quarterback situation. And that's the same problem that I have with the Las Vegas Raiders. However, they are going to be able to win some games that you don't think they should win, but they also are going to lose a good amount of games that they have no business losing. And if you've been following the Pittsburgh Steelers for a while, you know that Mike Tomlin always has a tendency to lose games that he has no business losing, such as when they lost back-to-back against the Arizona Cardinals and the New England Patriots last year. I just don't see it with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Until they get a damn quarterback in there, I can't see them having much success. The only reason they swept the Ravens last year was because, for one, yes, you did beat Lamar when you played them the first time in the regular season, but you barely were able to beat their JV squad in the final game of the regular season. And two, you were able to beat Cincinnati because they didn't have Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is going to be fully healthy. I think those could be two potential L's for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I definitely expect the Ravens to at least split the season series when they play this year. Quarterback is just why I can't believe in Pittsburgh this year. And I think this is going to be Mike Tomlin's first ever losing season. I got the Browns coming in at 8-9 this year. They're a big mystery team this year, because if Deshaun Watson bounces back and we see the version of him that we saw back in Houston, this could be a team that could be good enough to win it all this year. But I just think at this point, what we've seen out of Deshaun Watson these last couple of years is just what he is at this point. He's regressed, and I just don't think he's that good of a quarterback anymore. He's pretty much a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. They are going to have a good defense because they still have Jim Schwartz as their defensive coordinator, and that is going to be a big reason why they're going to win a good amount of games this year. But I just can't see Deshaun Watson shaking back. I just think that we've seen a big fall off from grace out of him, and that contract that they gave him fully guaranteed is going to go down as one of the biggest contract blunders in NFL history. So I got them at 8-9. 12-5, I have the Baltimore Ravens going. The Baltimore Ravens are still the best team in the NFL, arguably when it comes to a talent standpoint. They got one of the most complete rosters in the league. Plus, you add Derrick Henry, who could be the missing piece to them getting over the hump. But I got them finishing in second place in the AFC North this year, despite how good they still are. losing Mike McDonald is going to be a huge loss for them because this dude is considered to be the Sean McVay of defensive-minded coaches. So, of course, when you lose him, I don't care who the hell you have replacing him, that defense is going to have a slight drop-off. Not a major drop-off, but just a little bit of a slight drop-off. So, I got them going 12-5. And I got the Cincinnati Bengals going 13-4, winning this division. Look, when Joe Burrow got injured, you knew their season was over. But even when he got injured, they were still pretty competitive. They still won a couple of games with Jake Browning. They showed a little bit of fight, but their defense had a really down year under Lou Anarumo, who normally has a pretty well-coached and really good defense. That defense should bounce back this year. They had to start a lot of young guys in that secondary last year. A lot of those guys are going to be more experienced this year, such as Jordan Battle. He's a breakout player to look out for on the defensive end of things. I think their defensive line should still be pretty solid. And offensively, you know, even though Joe Burrow had a slow start the last season, when he started to heat up and he just absolutely torched the 49ers, he showed why he's the second best quarterback in the league. This is the only quarterback right now that has a postseason win against Patrick Mahomes. So if Cincinnati's offensive line improves, which it should, with what they have a receiver with Jermaine Burton, who you just drafted, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, there's going to be a really explosive offense, and they're going to be really hard to stop with the defense that should bounce back this year. I got them going 13-4, winning the AFC North this year. Now we move on to the NFC, starting off with the NFC West. I got the Arizona Cardinals going 6-11. This is going to be a team that, to me, they're going to be Kyler Murray, and that's pretty much it. If this offense cannot score everybody they play, they're not going to win too many games, man, because that defense looks really bad on paper, man. I don't know where the pass rush is going to come from. They still have Budda Baker in the secondary, but that's all about it they got in the secondary, man. That defense just looks putrid. Jonathan Gannon, a defensive-minded coach. He may be able to slightly elevate that unit a tad bit, but I don't know, man. I think that this is going to be an offensive-dependent team, and they are going to be really good offensively. And when Kyler Murray came back, they were a really good team. And I was a little bit conflicted when I had them going 6-11. I was like, you know, should I redo it or should I just redo all of this? Because Arizona did have a lot of close games that you didn't expect them to be close, especially, didn't they beat the Dallas Cowboys last year, if I'm not mistaken? So, yeah, man, like, Arizona did have a couple of close games in there. They did have a couple of upset wins, and they beat Pittsburgh. And when Kyler Murray came back, they were a really tough out. But I don't see that defense being good this year. I expect this to be one of the worst defenses in the National Football League this year. And that's ultimately why I got them going 6-11. I got the Seahawks going 10-7. This is the most underrated team in the NFL coming into this season, man. People forget how much talent Seattle has. They've done a fantastic job of drafting, especially on the defensive side. The only problem is that Pete Carroll the last couple of years has held that defense back because he's been running an outdated scheme. Now with Mike McDonald, somebody who's supposed to be seen as the Sean McVay of defensive-minded coaches, I expect this to be an elite defense this year. Offensively, Geno Smith wasn't a problem last year. The offensive line wasn't that good, and that was a huge reason for his inconsistent play. Geno is still good enough to win you 10 games if you give him the necessary pieces. They got a really good OC who came from Washington under Kalen DeBoer. So this is going to be a really good team this year, man. They got receivers. They got really good running backs. They have a lot of talent and depth on defense, especially when it comes to their pass rush. Seattle is a really underrated team. I have them going 10-7. The Los Angeles Rams, I have them going 10-7 as well, along with the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams defensively, I think they could take a step back, with them losing their defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris, to Atlanta to become their new head coach. Offensively, they still are going to be really good. It's just that, you know, I can't see them winning any more. Well, I could see them winning more than 10 games, but it's just, you know, Seattle's going to be really good this year. I don't think their schedule is that easy as well. So I got them winning 10 games. And I got the 49ers going 13-4, winning the NFC West again. This still is the best team in this division. even if they do trade away Brandon Ayuk, whenever Ricky Pearsall gets off NFI, he's going to be a stud. They have some concerns on the offensive line, but I think they'll end up getting that figured out. Brock Purdy is the most overhated player in the league behind Lamar Jackson. That defense should still be pretty good. They do have a new DC, so we're going to see how making that defensive coordinator change improves the defense. They are going to have Hufanga coming back fully healthy. We seem to forget how good he was prior to sustaining that season-ending injury last year. And the 49ers are a team that you should see in the Final Four of this year in the postseason. Moving on to the next division, man. We got to talk about the New York Giants, bro. If you're a Giants fan, the only reason you're going to have the turn on Giants game is to watch New York Giants. The only reason you're going to have of what... I can't talk right now, man. If you're a New York Giants fan, the only reason you're going to have to watch the Giants play this year is because of Malik Neighbors. This dude is going to be must-see TV. But outside of that, you did improve the offensive line, but I don't really know if those free agency moves are going to work out just based off the New York Giants' history of their free agency moves. Remember, last year they signed Paris Campbell. They traded for Darren Waller. They got Adoree Jackson. And really, none of those guys really materialized or did anything worthwhile. Daniel Jones is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. And after watching Hard Knocks, which follow their offseason moves in the front office, it's just, I got really low expectations for the Giants this year. I think they're going to be in the tank for Carson Beck or Shedeur Sanders sweepstakes. The Commanders, I have them going 5-12. Some people feel this could be a sleeper team this year, and I could see that, but I expect Jaden Daniels to have some inconsistent games. He'll have some good games here, he'll have some bad games there. Dan Quinn, as a head coach, it just doesn't really get me going. The last time he was a head coach in Atlanta, his defenses weren't really that good, and his defenses were really good. The last couple of years, he's been the defensive coordinator in Dallas, and they did make some really good free agency signings, such as bringing in Frankie Louisville and Jeremy Chin on defense, but I just don't see it with the Commanders this year. I could see this team taking a big jump next year in 2025 when Jaden Daniels goes into year 2, but their offensive line is still a big concern, and I'm just not a big fan of Dan Quinn. I got the Dallas Cowboys at 8-9 this year. I think they're going to miss the playoffs. This team has a lot of red flags. Their offensive line is concerning. The wide receiving position is concerning. Brandon Cooks could regress. Their running back position is concerning. I bet you guys can't even name me a single running back on that team not named Ezekiel Elliott. Their defense is still really talented, but they downgraded, losing Dan Quinn and replacing him with Mike Zimmer, who was the former head coach on the Minnesota Vikings. And Mike Zimmer is regarded as a really good defensive mind. But the problem is that I feel his defenses have gotten worse as he's gotten older with age. His last 2 years in Minnesota, his defenses ranked near the bottom of every statistical category in the NFL, which led to his demise and why he got fired. I just have a lot of concerns with the Dallas Cowboys this year. You got some tensions brewing between Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones. I just don't think the Cowboys are going to have a good season. And I got the Philadelphia Eagles winning this division, going 12-5. The problem with Philly last year was that Nick Sirianni whiffed on his staff hires. Staff hires are really overlooked. People only talk about who the coordinators are when they're bad. But when they're good, nobody really knows too much about them until they end up getting hired and becoming head coaches. With you bringing in Kellen Moore, he's going to be way better than what you had last year. And Kellen Moore isn't the best offensive coordinator in the world, but he's good enough that he's a safe hire for you. You know that your offense is in safe hands with him. Defensively, I felt like Vic Fangio was probably the best staff hire that any team made this offseason. This defense is already insanely talented. They underperformed massively relative to what they had going into last year. They're stacked on the defensive line. They got some really good linebackers. I love what they have at cornerback this year. You got Quinyon Mitchell. You got Cooper DeJean, the white cornerback out of Iowa. I can't wait to see those guys in action this year. You added Saquon Barkley in free agency. That's going to be a massive pickup for the Philadelphia Eagles, man. The Philadelphia Eagles, to me, this is a top 3 team going into this year, and they definitely still are in the Super Bowl conversation. They don't need Jalen Hurts to play at an elite level. They just need him to play at a good enough level to what he played at last year prior to him kind of falling off after they went 10-1. So I got Philadelphia winning this division at 12-5. The Minnesota Vikings, I have them going 8-9. Some people may feel like this is a little bit too nice for Minnesota. We don't know how good J.J. McCarthy is going to be. Most people are pretty low on him. I'm pretty low on him also, along with Sam Darnold. But Kevin O'Connell was able to make the most of his quarterback situation last year. They were still competitive despite having Joshua Dobbs, who had a couple of decent showings until he just completely fell off the rails. And then you had Nick Mullins, who just was a turnover machine. But Sam Darnold, maybe he could be good enough for the Vikings to win some games. I remember when he was playing for the Carolina Panthers a few years ago and Steve Wilks took over as the interim head coach. Sam Darnold played pretty well. And Sam Darnold can be serviceable for you. But that's the problem. He's going to be serviceable for you, which means that he's not going to win you a lot of games. He's not going to lose you too many games neither, but he's just a middle-of-the-road quarterback. The large reason why I can see the Vikings winning 8 games this year is because they got Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. That defense was outstanding last year, and they're only going to get better since they have improved in several areas on that defense as well. But I got them going 8-9, missing the postseason this year. The Chicago Bears, my record prediction for them is 9-8. You got Caleb Williams, who should make this offense explosive with what he's going to be throwing to at wide receiver. The offensive line is going to be pretty solid. You know that you're going to have a really outstanding defense. It's just that I don't know about Matt Eberflus as a coach, and despite how good I believe Caleb Williams is going to be as a rookie, you know, with rookies, there are always going to be a couple of inconsistent games. I don't think their schedule is the easiest. They do play in a pretty tough division, so I could see them being a team that is competing for the 7th seed in the NFC, but maybe they come a little bit closer, missing out on the playoffs this year. Maybe they are able to sneak into the playoffs. We will see. I got the Green Bay Packers at 11-6. To me, the Packers are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. You got Jeff Hafley taking over as your defensive coordinator after getting rid of Joe Barry, who severely underutilized the talent that the Packers have on defense. From a talent standpoint, the Packers have a top 7 defense in the league. When Rashawn Gary is healthy, he's one of the better defensive players in the league, and he's a sneaky candidate to win Defensive Player of the Year, man. He definitely has the talent to do so. The question is, can he stay healthy? You got Jair Alexander. Like, there are a lot of dogs that they have on that defense, and I think that Jeff Hafley is going to bring the best out of that unit. And if they would have had a good defense last year, especially when they made that late run, late last year into the postseason, they potentially could have been in the Super Bowl. With Jordan Love, if he's able to pick up from where he left off at the end of last season, this is a really damn good team that the Green Bay Packers have coming into this year. They have a lot of youth. They are really good up front. Tons of depth. You had Josh Jacobs, who should be an upgrade over Aaron Jones, who pretty much is like glass. You just breathe on him and he gets injured. I just love the Green Bay Packers this year. But I got the Detroit Lions taking the North again this year. Even though they do have the same record, I believe that in the division, the Detroit Lions are going to be a tad bit better. The Lions pretty much have everybody from last year back. You didn't lose your offensive coordinator. You keep your staff intact. This should be a team that should be able to get back to that NFC Conference Championship game. Offensive line is great. Receivers are pretty decent, even though I don't know about Jameson Williams. This is his make-or-break year. But outside of that, there aren't too many questions with the Detroit Lions. Their defense was really bad last year, but they did improve that. And I think for Detroit, I could see you winning the North again this year. And moving on to the final division, we got the NFC South, pretty much the worst division in the NFL still for a third straight year. I got the Saints at 6-11. I just don't see it with Dennis Allen. I thought he was very fortunate to get to 9 wins last year. That's the most wins that he's ever had in his coaching career. They got some concerns on the offensive line. Derek Carr is mid and regressing. They hired Clint Kubiak, and if he ends up proving to be a successful hire, similar to when Todd Bowles hired Dave Canales last year, the Saints could surprise people, and they definitely could be a playoff team. But offensively, they just have a lot of concerns, a lot of things to be iffy about. Even defensively, I don't know if that defense is going to be as good this year as what it was last year under Dennis Allen. I just don't like him as a head coach, man. I think he's going to go 6-11 and he gets fired at the end of this year. I got the Buccaneers also going 6-11. They have overachieved over the last couple of years under Todd Bowles, man. He barely made it to the playoffs with Tom Brady. And even last year, they barely got into the playoffs. The only reason they got in was because they got hot near the tail end of the season. They benefited off playing a really weak schedule. And even then, the Buccaneers, it's not like they're winning a lot of games. Todd Bowles, he's just barely scraping by. I think this is a year when the Buccaneers come back down to earth. Losing Dave Canales is going to be a really big loss for them, because when you look at the impact that Dave Canales has had everywhere he's been, he's elevated every single quarterback. I mean, Geno Smith had that resurrection season. Dave Canales was a big part of that. And you saw how Geno Smith kind of regressed a little bit after Dave Canales left. Now Dave Canales is with the Carolina Panthers, and you saw how good Baker Mayfield was last year. That was mainly because of Dave Canales and the system that he implemented, which played well to Baker Mayfield's strengths. With him being gone, I expect this entire team to just kind of regress a little bit, and I got them at 6 wins. Next up, I have the Atlanta Falcons going 9-8. The Falcons are locked in to be a sure thing to win the NFC South, but I don't really see them in that way. I do think that they are a playoff team, but with Raheem Morris, I still have some concerns about him. He's not a proven thing that, oh yeah, he's just going to be a significant upgrade over Arthur Smith. That defense does have some concerns, even though I do think that defense could overachieve, but they do have a lot of young guys that they're banking on who they drafted. And with Kirk Cousins, I have some concerns about how good he's going to be coming off that Achilles injury. So I got them going 9-8. And lastly, I got the Carolina Panthers winning the NFC South. This is the biggest sleeper team in the NFL, in my opinion. I'm not giving up on Bryce Young. King Bryce is about to arrive this year. Now that he has a better supporting cast, you got Dave Canales, who has been successful with every quarterback that he's worked with. At this point, you can pretty much call Dave Canales the quarterback whisperer. And I think he's going to be able to have the same impact on Bryce Young as what Mike McDaniel has had on Tua Tagovailoa down there in Miami. And their defense, when you look at it from a talent standpoint, yeah, there are a lot of guys that you don't know about, and it doesn't really look that good on paper, but Ejiro Evero is one of the better defensive coordinators in the league. He's really good when it comes to maximizing the players that he has to work with, and I don't think that defense is going to be any worse than a middle-of-the-pack defense, which I still think should be good enough to win a division that isn't really that good, especially when you're going to have an improved offense. Now that I have my record predictions out the way, if you guys haven't seen those, go ahead and check those out, because now I'm about to give you guys my NFL playoff predictions for the 2024-2025 NFL season. Starting with the AFC, I got the New York Jets getting the 7th seed, going against the Los Angeles Chargers, who I have getting the 2nd seed because I have them winning the AFC West this year. Kansas City, I got them coming in at the 6th seed, going on the road to play the Houston Texans. The Baltimore Ravens are going to be the 5 seed, going on the road to play Buffalo, who has the 4th seed after winning the AFC East again. And when we move on to my NFC wildcard predictions, I got Seattle sneaking in. That's the 7th seed at 10-7. They're going to be playing the Philadelphia Eagles. The Los Angeles Rams and the Detroit Lions are going to be rematching again from the wildcard round of this past season. And I got Green Bay playing Carolina on the road, since I have Carolina boldly winning the NFC South this year. Now, moving on to my divisional round predictions, I got Houston playing the Los Angeles Chargers. The Ravens have to go on the road to play Joe. And Joe Burrow only has one playoff loss on his resume right now. When you play Joe Burrow, you better bring your A game, because he's just as good as what Patrick Mahomes is in the postseason. He's the only active quarterback who has a playoff win against Patrick Mahomes. And these are going to be some really good matchups that could go either way. Some people may be like, JT, you're crazy if you think the Chargers are going to go that far. You're underestimating the impact of Jim Harbaugh. For the divisional round in the NFC, I got the Detroit Lions taking care of business against the LA Rams. Once again, they're going to be playing the Philadelphia Eagles. The Green Bay Packers, they move on after beating the Carolina Panthers, and they're going to be playing the San Francisco 49ers in a rematch of last year's divisional round game. And we saw how close that game was. If it wasn't for Jordan Love, making a young mistake at the end of that game, Green Bay possibly could have been in the Super Bowl potentially, or in the conference championship game. But they would have made it to the conference championship. I believe they would have won that thing. So I'm excited to see a rematch between these two squads. Now we move on to conference championship weekend. Who makes it to the conference championship games this year? In the AFC Championship, I got the Houston Texans hosting the Baltimore Ravens at home. This is a vastly improved Houston Texans team compared to the one that got destroyed and dismantled by Baltimore when they played in the playoffs last year. And I won't even say destroyed and dismantled, because in the first half they did put up a pretty good fight, but in the second half the Ravens were just too talented. Well, the Houston Texans are just as good as what the Baltimore Ravens are. Plus, you're going to have CJ Stroud, who I believe should win MVP this year, with how much talent they have to work with at receiver, and capable of how good that defense is going to be. There's going to be a really tough outing for Baltimore, man. And the NFC Championship, we got the Eagles taking on the Green Bay Packers. And with the Super Bowl 59, I think we're going to see the Houston Texans versus the Green Bay Packers. This is my Super Bowl pick. A lot of people probably don't see the Super Bowl coming, because you don't really think that the Texans and the Green Bay Packers are going to make that jump. But too many people are stuck in the recency bias. They're either picking the 49ers or the Lions to make it out of the NFC. You're either picking Kansas City or Houston. Well, you're either picking Kansas City or the Ravens to make it out of the AFC. I think that we're going to have a Super Bowl that nobody really sees coming. You got two ascending young quarterbacks in CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, which, if they both make it to the Super Bowl at this point, you have to assume that both of these guys are MVP finalists and they both played at an MVP level. And the team not going to take to win this game are the Green Bay Packers. On paper, Houston looks like the better team, but the better team doesn't always win the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl also comes down to coaching, who's better in late game situations. And I just trust the Green Bay Packers a little bit more, with them having a more experienced head coach, a more experienced coaching staff than I do the Miko Ryans. So these are my NFL playoff predictions for the 2024-2025 NFL season. And these are my complete NFL predictions. I might end up changing these depending on how the preseason goes for certain teams, because last year I had to change my predictions because the Carolina Panthers were just so atrocious. I had no choice but to not pick them to win the division last year, but I'm picking them to win it this year. And just let me know, your predictions down in the comment section down below. I know a lot of you guys are going to disagree with these, and I don't really care if you disagree. My only thing is that if you're going to disagree, don't say, oh, JT, you're a dumbass. You don't do no research. You don't know what you're talking about. If you disagree, Explain to me why you believe I'm wrong and give your counter argument so we can have a good discussion in the comment section. I can't have a good debate with you if your only argument is you don't know shit about football. Tell me why you disagree with my prediction so we can have a good conversation.